Doctor tells girl she's just clumsy. Then a nurse uncovers the horrifying truth about her bruises. 7-year-old Lily Thompson was a frequent visitor to the emergency room at Mercy Hospital in suburban Chicago. Not alarmingly frequent, but often enough that some of the staff recognized her on sight. She was a small, thin girl with bright, inquisitive blue eyes that seemed to hold a perpetual sadness, and long, tangled brown hair that often obscured her face. She was usually accompanied by her mother, a tired-looking woman named Susan, who always offered the same explanation: Lily was clumsy. "She's always bumping into things," Susan would say, her voice a mixture of exasperation and resignation. "She's a bit of a tomboy, loves to climb trees and play sports. She just falls a lot." Dr. Michael Stevens, a seasoned pediatrician with a busy practice and a tendency towards quick diagnoses, usually took Susan's explanation at face value. He would examine Lily's bruises, prescribe some pain medication, and advise Susan to keep a closer eye on her daughter. He saw dozens of children every day, many with far more serious ailments than a few bumps and bruises. He didn't have time to delve deeper into every case, especially when the explanation seemed so straightforward. Lily rarely spoke during these visits. She would sit quietly on the examination table, her eyes downcast, her small hands clutching the edge of the paper sheet. She would answer Dr. Stevens's questions in monosyllables, her voice barely audible. She never complained, never cried, never contradicted her mother's explanations. This particular visit was prompted by a particularly nasty bruise on Lily's forearm, a dark purplish-blue mark that stretched from her elbow to her wrist. "What happened this time, Lily?" Dr. Stevens asked, his tone kindly but perfunctory. Lily mumbled something about falling off her bike. "She was trying to do a wheelie," Susan interjected, rolling her eyes. "I've told her 100 times to be careful." Dr. Stevens examined the bruise, prodding it gently. Lily winced but didn't cry out. He noted the location and size of the bruise in her chart, along with the usual diagnosis: accidental injury, contusion of forearm. "She's a tough little cookie," Dr. Stevens said, smiling at Lily. "Just try to be a bit more careful, okay?" Lily nodded silently, her eyes still fixed on the floor. He prescribed some ibuprofen for the pain and advised Susan to apply ice to the bruise. He then moved on to his next patient, another child with a runny nose and a cough. Lily Thompson and her bruises were quickly forgotten. He had a waiting room full of patients, and Lily's mother seemed to be dealing with the situation. He saw no evidence of any problems, and trusted that a mother would know best. Sarah Jenkins was a registered nurse in the pediatric emergency room at Mercy Hospital. She had been a nurse for over 15 years, and she had seen it all: broken bones, fevers, infections, accidents of every imaginable kind. She was compassionate, empathetic, and deeply committed to her patients. She had a particular soft spot for children, and she always took the time to connect with them, to make them feel safe and comfortable. Sarah had noticed Lily Thompson on several previous visits. She had been struck by the girl's quiet demeanor, her sad eyes, and the frequency of her injuries. She had also noticed a subtle discrepancy between Susan Thompson's explanations and the nature of Lily's bruises. They seemed too frequent, too severe, and often located in areas that were not typically injured in accidental falls: the inner arms, the back, the thighs. Sarah had learned from experience that children often didn't disclose abuse, especially to strangers. They were afraid, ashamed, or they had been threatened into silence. She knew that it was crucial to pay attention to the subtle signs, to listen to her intuition, to look beyond the obvious. She had tried to talk to Dr. Stevens about her concerns, but he had dismissed her worries. "She's just a clumsy kid, Sarah," he had said. "Her mother seems concerned. There's no reason to suspect anything more." Sarah respected Dr. Stevens, but she couldn't shake her feeling that something was wrong. She knew that doctors, especially busy ones, could sometimes miss things. They relied on the information they were given, and they often didn't have the time to delve deeper into a patient's history or to build the kind of rapport that might encourage a child to open up. Nurses, on the other hand, often spent more time with patients, observing their behavior, listening to their concerns, and building a connection. Sarah believed that this gave her a unique perspective, a different lens through which to value a patient's situation. She decided to keep an eye on Lily, to watch for any further signs of abuse. She knew she was walking a fine line, risking Dr. Stevens' disapproval and potentially causing unnecessary distress to Lily's family. But she couldn't ignore her instincts. She had a duty to protect her patients, even if it meant questioning the judgment of a respected physician. She knew it was her duty to report anything that seemed suspicious. She also knew how difficult it was to prove. She hoped she was wrong, but she had a growing feeling that she wasn't. Sarah made a point of interacting with Lily whenever she came to there. She would offer her a sticker, a coloring book, or a small toy. She would chat with her about school, her friends, her favorite things. She tried to create a safe, comfortable space, a place where Lily might feel able to confide in her. But Lily remained withdrawn and hesitant. She answered Sarah's questions politely but briefly, her eyes darting around the room, as if she were afraid of being overheard. She never initiated conversation, never asked for anything, never complained. Sarah noticed that Lily always seemed to be on guard, her body tense, her movements restricted. She flinched at sudden noises or movements, and she avoided eye contact. She seemed to be constantly monitoring her surroundings, as if she were expecting something bad to happen. Sarah also observed the interactions between Lily and her mother. Susan Thompson was often impatient and dismissive of Lily, her tone sharp, her words critical. She seemed to be more concerned with getting through the air visit quickly than with comforting her daughter. On one occasion, Sarah overheard Susan scolding Lily for being so clumsy. "I've told you a million times to be more careful," she snapped. "You're always getting hurt. It's embarrassing." Lily had shrunk back, her eyes filling with tears, but she hadn't said a word. Sarah had felt a surge of anger and frustration. She wanted to intervene, to tell Susan to be more supportive, to show some compassion for her daughter. But she knew that it wasn't her place. She had to be careful, to gather more information before making any accusations. She continued to observe Lily, to document her injuries, to build a rapport with her. She knew that it might take time, that trust was a fragile thing, especially with a child who had been hurt. She also started to research child abuse, reading articles, attending workshops, and consulting with colleagues who had experience in this area. She wanted to be sure that she was doing everything she could to protect Lily, to identify the signs of abuse, and to take the appropriate action if necessary. She knew that she was risking her professional reputation, her relationship with Dr. Stevens, and potentially even her job. But she couldn't ignore her conscience. She had a responsibility to this child, a moral obligation to protect her from harm. She hoped that she was just being overcautious, but her gut told her that Lily was hiding a dark secret, and that she, Sarah, was the only one who could help her bring it to light. Sarah started keeping a private journal of her encounters with Lily. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Lily was brought thither by her mother, her face pale and streaked with tears. She had a large, ugly bruise on her cheekbone, and her lip was swollen and bleeding. She fell down the stairs, Susan Thompson said, her voice flat and unemotional. She tripped over her own feet. Dr. Stevens examined Lily, his expression concerned but still not alarmed. He cleaned and dressed the wound on her lip, checked for any signs of concussion, and ordered an X-ray of her cheekbone to rule out a fracture. "She's lucky she didn't break anything," he said. "She'll have a nasty black eye, but she'll be fine." Sarah, who was assisting Dr. Stevens, looked at Lily's injuries with a growing sense of dread. The bruise on her cheekbone was not a typical bruise from a fall. It was elongated, with a distinct pattern, as if it had been caused by a hand or a fist. She also noticed other bruises on Lily's body, in various stages of healing: yellowish-green bruises on her arms, faded purple bruises on her back, and small, round bruises on her shins. These bruises were not consistent with a single fall down the stairs. They were evidence of repeated trauma. Sarah felt a surge of anger and determination. She could no longer stand by and watch this child suffer. She had to do something. She waited until Dr. Stevens had left the room. Then she knelt down beside Lily, her voice soft and gentle. "Lily," she said, "I know you're scared, but I want you to know that you're safe here. No one is going to hurt you." Lily looked at Sarah, her eyes filled with fear and mistrust. She didn't speak. "I know it's hard to talk about," Sarah continued, "but I need you to tell me what happened. Did you really fall down the stairs?" Lily hesitated, her lower lip trembling. She glanced at her mother, who was standing by the door, her arms crossed, her expression impatient. Sarah gently took Lily's hand, her touch conveying warmth and reassurance. "It's okay, Lily," she said. "You can tell me. I'm here to help you." Lily looked at Sarah's kind, compassionate face, and something inside her seemed to break. A tear rolled down her cheek, followed by another, and another. She began to sob, her small body shaking with the force of her emotions. Sarah knew that this was her chance. This was the moment of truth. Sarah gently guided Lily to a small, private consultation room, away from the noise and activity of there. She closed the door, creating a safe, secluded space where Lily could feel comfortable enough to talk. "It's okay, sweetie," Sarah said, her voice soothing. "Take your time. Just tell me what happened." Lily sat on the edge of the chair, her hands clutching her knees, her body trembling. She looked at Sarah, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear, shame, and a desperate plea for help. I didn't fall down the stairs," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Sarah nodded encouragingly. "I know," she said. "Can you tell me what really happened?" Lily hesitated, her gaze darting around the room, as if she were afraid of being overheard. Then, in a rush of words, the truth came pouring out. "It was my uncle," she said, her voice choked with sobs. He hits me. He hurts me." Sarah felt a wave of nausea, a surge of anger and protectiveness. She had suspected abuse, but hearing the words from Lily's own mouth was devastating. "Your uncle?" Sarah asked gently. "Does he live with you?" Lily nodded. "He lives in the basement. He comes upstairs when mommy's not home. He tells me not to tell." "What does he do, Lily?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Can you tell me how he hurts you?" Lily began to describe the abuse in detail, her words halting and fragmented, but her meaning unmistakable. She spoke of being hit, punched, kicked, and slapped. She spoke of being locked in her room for hours, denied food and water. She spoke of being threatened, told that if she ever told anyone, he would hurt her even more, or he would hurt her mother. The abuse had been going on for years, since she was a toddler. It had become a part of her life, a terrifying secret that she had carried alone, too afraid to tell anyone. Sarah listened patiently, her heart breaking with each word. She offered Lily tissues, a glass of water, and words of comfort and reassurance. She told her that she was brave, that she had done nothing wrong, that she was not to blame. "You did the right thing by telling me, Lily," Sarah said. "You're very brave. And I promise you, I'm going to help you. You're not going to have to go back there. You're going to be safe." As Lily continued to talk, Sarah carefully documented everything she said, noting the details of the abuse, the frequency, the specific injuries, and the threats that had been made. She knew that this information would be crucial for the investigation. She also examined Lily's body more closely, noting the various bruises, their locations, their colors, and their shapes. She took photographs of the injuries, documenting the physical evidence of the abuse. She realized that the bruises were not consistent with accidental falls. They were consistent with inflicted trauma, with being struck by a hand, a fist, or an object. The evidence was overwhelming. Lily Thompson was a victim of severe and prolonged child abuse. And Sarah was the one who had finally uncovered the truth. She felt relief. She knew she had done the right thing. Sarah knew she had to act quickly. She couldn't allow Lily to return to her home, to the environment where she had been subjected to such horrific abuse. She excused herself from the consultation room, telling Lily to stay put and that she would be right back. She found a quiet corner of there and called Child Protective Services (CPS). She reported the abuse, providing all the details she had gathered from Lily, including the uncle's name and address, the description of the abuse, and the physical evidence she had documented. The CPS worker on the other end of the line listened intently, asking clarifying questions and taking notes. She assured Sarah that they would take the case seriously and that they would send a caseworker to the hospital immediately. Sarah then called the police, reporting the suspected child abuse and requesting that an officer be dispatched to the hospital. She knew that the police would need to interview Lily, to gather evidence, and to potentially arrest the perpetrator. She returned to the consultation room, where Lily was sitting quietly, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "I made some phone calls, Lily," Sarah said gently. "I called some people who are going to help you. They're going to make sure you're safe." Lily nodded, her lower lip trembling. "Will I have to go home?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "No, sweetie," Sarah said. "You won't have to go home. You'll be staying somewhere safe, with people who will take care of you." A CPS caseworker, a woman named Ms. Johnson, arrived at the hospital shortly thereafter. She was a kind, compassionate woman with years of experience working with abused children. She spoke to Lily gently, reassuring her that she was safe and that she would be protected. Ms. Johnson also spoke to Sarah, thanking her for her vigilance and her quick action. "You did the right thing, Nurse Jenkins," she said. "You may have saved this child's life." A police officer, Officer Ramirez, also arrived at the hospital. He interviewed Lily, taking her statement and gathering evidence. He was careful and sensitive, understanding the trauma that Lily had endured. Lily, with Sarah by her side, recounted the abuse she had suffered, her voice stronger now, her fear gradually replaced by a sense of relief and empowerment. She was finally being heard. She was finally being believed. Officer Ramirez assured Lily that they would do everything they could to protect her and to bring her abuser to justice. He told her that she was brave and that she had done nothing wrong. He also promised to keep her safe. The police investigation moved swiftly. Officer Ramirez, accompanied by another officer, went to Lily's home to confront her uncle, Robert Miller. Miller, a burly, middle-aged man with a sullen expression, initially denied the accusations. He claimed that Lily was a clumsy child, prone to accidents, and that her bruises were the result of her own carelessness. "She's always falling down, bumping into things," Miller said, his voice defensive. "She's a difficult child, always making up stories." But the police were not swayed by his denials. They had Lily's testimony, Sarah's documentation, and the physical evidence of the bruises. They also had a search warrant for the house. A search of Miller's basement room revealed further evidence of abuse. They found restraints, a wooden paddle, and a collection of pornography. The room was squalid, with a foul odor and a pervasive sense of neglect. Miller's demeanor changed when confronted with this evidence. He became agitated, then belligerent, and finally, he broke down and confessed. Okay, I did it," he sobbed. "But she made me do it. She's a bad kid. She deserved it." The police arrested Miller on multiple charges of child abuse, assault, and endangerment. He was taken into custody, his reign of terror finally over. Meanwhile, Lily was taken to a safe house, a temporary shelter for abused children. She was examined by a pediatrician who specialized in child abuse cases. The doctor confirmed the extent of Lily's injuries, documenting the numerous bruises, abrasions, and scars that covered her small body. The doctor also noted the signs of emotional trauma: Lily's withdrawn demeanor, her fear of touch, her nightmares, and her anxiety. She diagnosed Lily with post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD), a common consequence of prolonged abuse. Lily was assigned a social worker, Ms. Evans, who would oversee her care and help her to navigate the complex process of foster care and, eventually, adoption. Ms. Evans was a kind, patient woman with a deep understanding of the needs of abused children. She explained to Lily, in simple terms, what was happening. She told her that her uncle had been arrested and that he would not be able to hurt her anymore. She told her that she would be staying in a safe place, with people who would take care of her. Lily, initially overwhelmed and confused, gradually began to understand. She felt a sense of relief, a lifting of the heavy burden she had carried for so long. She was safe. She was free. But she also felt a deep sadness, a sense of loss. She missed her mother, even though she knew that her mother had failed to protect her. She missed her home, even though it had been a place of terror. She felt like her world had been turned upside down, and she didn't know where she belonged. She was scared of what the future held. Robert Miller's arrest and the subsequent legal proceedings were a complex and emotionally charged affair. He initially pleaded not guilty, claiming that Lily was lying and that he was the victim of a conspiracy. His lawyer, a public defender appointed by the court, argued that the evidence against him was circumstantial and that Lily's testimony was unreliable due to her age and her history of clumsiness. But the prosecution, led by a determined assistant district attorney named Karen Davias, had a strong case. They had Lily's testimony, Sarah's detailed documentation, the medical reports, the evidence found in Miller's basement, and the testimony of several neighbors who had witnessed Miller's harsh treatment of Lily. The prosecution also called Dr. Stevens to the stand, forcing him to confront his own failure to recognize the signs of abuse. Dr. Stevens, initially defensive, eventually admitted that he had been too quick to dismiss Lily's injuries as accidental. "I made a mistake," he said, his voice filled with regret. "I should have listened to Nurse Jenkins. I should have investigated further. I failed that little girl." His testimony was a turning point in the trial. It undermined Miller's defense and highlighted the importance of thorough medical examinations and the need to listen to the concerns of nurses and other healthcare professionals. The most powerful testimony, of course, came from Lily herself. She was initially terrified of facing her abuser in court, but with the support of Ms. Evans, her social worker, and Sarah, who attended the trial every day, she found the courage to speak. She described the abuse in detail, her voice clear and unwavering, her eyes fixed on the prosecutor. She recounted the beatings, the threats, the constant fear that had dominated her young life. Miller's lawyer attempted to cross-examine Lily, trying to confuse her, to trip her up, to make her doubt her own memories. But Lily held her ground. She had lived through the abuse, and she would not be silenced. The jury deliberated for 2 days. The case was emotionally draining, and the evidence was disturbing. But in the end, they reached a unanimous verdict, guilty on all counts. Robert Miller was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, his life of cruelty and abuse finally brought to an end. He showed no remorse, no regret, only anger and resentment. For Lily, the verdict was a victory, a validation of her truth, a step towards healing. But it was also a reminder of the trauma she had endured, the scars that would likely remain with her forever. The trial had been a public spectacle, with media coverage focusing on the shocking details of the abuse and the failure of the system to protect Lily sooner. The case sparked a debate about the responsibilities of doctors, nurses, teachers, and other professionals to recognize and report suspected child abuse. It also highlighted the need for more resources for child protective services and for better training for those who work with children. The outcome was a relief to everyone involved, except the perpetrator. Lily's transition to a new life was not easy. She was placed in a foster home with a low-lying and supportive couple, John and Mary Peterson. The Petersons had 2 grown children of their own and had been foster parents for many years. They were experienced in dealing with traumatized children, and they were committed to providing Lily with a safe, stable, and nurturing environment. But Lily was initially withdrawn and distrustful. She had difficulty sleeping, plagued by nightmares and flashbacks. She flinched at sudden movements or loud noises. She was afraid of men, especially older men. The Petersons were patient and understanding. They gave Lily space, allowing her to adjust at her own pace. They provided her with a comfortable room, filled with toys, books, and art supplies. They cooked her favorite meals, read her bedtime stories, and showered her with affection. They also enrolled her in therapy with a child psychologist who specialized in trauma. The therapy sessions were difficult, often painful, but they were essential for Lily's healing. She slowly began to process the abuse, to understand her feelings, and to develop coping mechanisms. She learned to talk about her experiences, to express her anger, her fear, and her sadness. She learned to trust again, to believe that not all adults were cruel and abusive. She learned that she was not to blame for what had happened to her, that she was a survivor, not a victim. The Petersons also worked to create a sense of normalcy in Lily's life. They enrolled her in a new school, where she made friends and excelled in her studies. They encouraged her to participate in extracurricular activities, such as art classes and soccer. They took her on family outings, to the park, the zoo, and the movies. Slowly but surely, Lily began to blossom. She started to smile more, to laugh more, to engage with the world around her. She rediscovered the joy of being a child, the simple pleasures of playing, learning, and exploring. She still had bad days, moments when the memories of the abuse would resurface, overwhelming her with fear and sadness. But she learned to cope with these moments, to reach out for support, to talk about her feelings. She also formed a close bond with Sarah Jenkins, the nurse who had saved her. Sarah visited Lily regularly, offering her friendship, support, and a reminder that she was not alone. Sarah became a role model for Lily, a symbol of kindness, compassion, and courage. Lily's journey of healing was long and arduous, but with the love and support of her foster family, her therapist, and Sarah, she made remarkable progress. She was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to overcome even the most horrific trauma and to find hope and happiness in the aftermath. She began to trust people again. Robert Miller's conviction was a landmark case, a victory for child protection advocates and a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of child abuse. He appealed the verdict, but his appeal was denied. He would spend the rest of his life behind bars, his freedom forfeited, his reputation destroyed. Susan Thompson, Lily's mother, was also held accountable for her failure to protect her daughter. She was charged with child endangerment and neglect. She pleaded guilty and was sentenced to probation and mandatory parenting classes. She lost custody of Lily, a decision that was painful but necessary for Lily's safety and well-being. Susan eventually came to terms with her own failings as a mother. She admitted that she had been in denial about the abuse, that she had been afraid of her brother, and that she had prioritized her own needs over Lily's. She began to attend therapy, working to address her own issues and to understand the devastating impact of her inaction. She hoped that one day, she might be able to earn back Lily's trust and to rebuild their relationship. Lily, meanwhile, continued to thrive in her foster home. She excelled in school, made close friends, and developed a passion for art. She found solace and expression in drawing and painting, creating beautiful images that reflected her inner world, her hopes, and her dreams. She remained in therapy, working through the lingering trauma of the abuse. She learned to manage her anxiety, to cope with her nightmares, and to build healthy relationships. She learned to trust adults, to believe in the goodness of people, and to embrace the possibility of a happy and fulfilling future. The Petersons, John and Mary, eventually adopted Lily, making her a permanent member of their family. They provided her with the love, stability, and security she had always craved. They celebrated her successes, supported her through her challenges, and helped her to become the strong, confident, and resilient young woman she was meant to be. Sarah Jenkins remained a significant figure in Lily's life. She continued to visit Lily regularly, their bond strengthened by the shared experience of uncovering the truth and bringing the abuser to justice. Sarah became a mentor to Lily, inspiring her to pursue a career in healthcare, to help others the way Sarah had helped her. Years later, Lily graduated from college with a degree in social work. She dedicated her career to helping abused children, working as a therapist and advocate, providing them with the support, guidance, and resources they needed to heal and thrive. She never forgot the horrors she had endured, but she refused to let them define her. She had transformed her pain into purpose, her victimhood into victory. She had become a voice for the voiceless, a champion for the vulnerable, a testament to the enduring power of hope and healing. Sarah, reflecting on Lily's journey, felt a profound sense of satisfaction and gratitude. She had made a difference in a child's life, a difference that would ripple outwards, touching countless others. She had followed her instincts, spoken up for the voiceless, and helped to bring a monster to justice. She had learned the true meaning of her profession, the profound responsibility and the immense reward of caring for others. She had been reminded that even in the darkest of circumstances, hope could flourish, and that even the smallest act of kindness could have a life-changing impact. And she had seen, firsthand, how one person's bravery could inspire an entire movement and bring about true justice. The case had affected her deeply and reinforced her belief in her profession.